Hello and welcome to Fully Charged Show podcast. I'm Maddie Moate and it's my turn to host a talk for my podcast debut. Hello everyone. This podcast carries on the Fully Charged live talks on the 7th, 8th and 9th of June 2019. This particular talk was recorded on the 7th of June and is titled, What's the Same as a Cheeseburger? Why What We Eat Matters. I was delighted to put forward this idea after I had written my article for the upcoming Fully Charged Almanac 2020, and with the excellent panelists of Dale Vince from Ecotricity, Jarvis Smith from my Green Pod, and finally Tayana Symons from Viva. There was lots of energy and passion in the room. So without further ado, here is why what we eat matters.
And welcome to the Mega Theatre, to one of the first panels of Fully Charged Live. It is my absolute pleasure to be here. So this first panel, it's what's the same as a cheeseburger? Why what we eat matters. So I calculated the estimated carbon cost of a cheeseburger, which is about 2.5 kilograms carbon, I believe. And then I said, okay, well, what's that the same as? And the answer is one cheeseburger is the same as 5 hot baths, or 10 portions of rice, or even using 5 new plastic bags every week for an entire year. That's just one cheeseburger. So what we eat really does matter, and that's sort of the thought behind this particular panel. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our panelists. Could we all please give a really warm welcome to Dale, Tayana, and Jarvis. Please do come along stage. Right, so I'm going to ask, can you all hear me okay? Because it's very loud in here. Yeah, everyone's fine? Okay, so we don't need to shout everybody. Would you like to quickly, very briefly introduce yourselves? Tayana.
I'm Tayana. I'm a campaigner for Viva. Viva are Europe's largest vegan campaigning charity, and for the last 25 years we've been exposing the realities of factory farming in the UK and promoting veganism as a healthier, more ethical and environmental lifestyle.
Okay, Dale.
I'm Dale Vince. I'm founder of Ecotricity, and our work began in energy because it was the biggest single source of carbon emissions back in the 90s. And we expanded our work to include transport and food because energy, transport and food between them are 80% of everybody's carbon footprint, and that's what our work is about, really, tackling those 3 big issues.
Jarvis.
And I'm Jarvis, the magazine that's on your chair. We publish that. We've been doing it for 10 years. We essentially promote an ethical lifestyle. So we find the products that are good for people and planet that you can buy into rather than the ones that are damaging our planet and our ecosystem. So we're the largest independent ethical lifestyle media company in the UK. And we have a magazine with The Guardian, and we reach about 6 million people. So we've been leading the charge in this space.
All of our panel are vegans. I'm not. I would consider myself a flexitarian, so I don't eat red meat. I eat meat occasionally, but I think about it really consciously. But I want to be better informed. It's something that every time I do eat meat now, there is something in the back of my mind that is telling me, should I be doing this? So let's start talking about the impact of beef, as that's the title of the panel. Let's start about how bad is the impact of beef on the environment? Tayana, do you want to start this one off?
Well, I mean, animal agriculture in general actually makes up 1/5 of all man-made carbon emissions, and 70% of global freshwater consumption is used by animal agriculture. Beef in itself, it's the main driver of tropical deforestation worldwide, and has a huge impact on land degradation, habitat loss, biodiversity.
What about, so Jarvis, like when you think about like beef, is this the absolute worst thing we could be eating?
Yeah, I mean, the beef industry is having a massive impact on deforestation because literally they're cutting down, really vital, juicy areas of land that sequester carbon from the atmosphere. to grow animal feed. I mean, it's huge, it's obscene. So, there is an argument, do we need animals for the natural balance of the ecosystems? Perhaps.
Yeah.
But do we need to be eating those animals? Absolutely not. So the point is that if we have 10 to 12 years, which is what science is now saying as an emergency on planet Earth, to turn the tables, and if we can't do it in that time, we will live radically different to how we're living now, then beef is a massive part of that turning the tables agenda.
Yeah. I know one of the concerns or the misconceptions that vegans get asked all the time is that, well, soy is just as bad as beef. I think it's got the second most impact in terms of agriculture and deforestation to beef. But why is that? Soy actually isn't necessarily the enemy here.
No, so a common thing that people say is, if you're vegan, you eat soy, that's damaging to the environment. Actually, 75% of all soya is fed to animals. Only 6% of soya worldwide is actually consumed by humans directly. So if you do want to cut down on soya and that is something you're worried about, then the answer to that is to actually go vegan.
Going vegan it's a choice, it's a massive lifestyle change. Is it the only option? So, Adele, I'd just like to get your perspective here, really. Do we all need to go vegan now to make a big difference? Is this really important? Or actually, is there a middle ground?
Oh, well, I think making a start is good enough. Have a meat-free day, move on to a couple of meat-free days. I don't think it really matters. I think setting out down the path is really important. And when people try eating differently, they feel the benefits of that. And, that will just increase over time. It's the same argument about living a green lifestyle. Often people that are critical of other people that speak out on green issues say, yes, but if you're not doing everything, then you're a hypocrite or it's not worth doing. I don't agree with that. I think we all have to just get started and do what we can and begin that journey. And it's the same with food and with veganism.
I know personally, I mentioned it at the start, but if I do eat meat, I feel guilty. Like, hands up if that's something that anyone else experiences at the moment. So you've got that in the back of your mind. And you're right about worrying about being a hypocrite. But actually, it doesn't always come down to eating meat. I'll find that I go, you know what, I'm having a meat-free day, so instead I'm going to have avocado on toast, let's say. But then I look at the packet of avocado, I'm like, oh, well, this has come from the other side of the world. And that's a problem in itself as well. Suddenly you're introducing food miles as an issue. So just for a bit of a giggle, really, I took my diet from 2 days ago, and I sort of just documented where these things came from. So I had a satsuma from Morocco, an apple from South Africa, almonds, California, coffee, Ethiopia, ramen soup, couldn't read the writing, absolutely no idea. And then a red pepper and mozzarella pie, which didn't have any information on it at all. So it's really difficult to not feel guilty about what we eat. Are food miles a problem? Is this something we also need to be considering? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, veganism has grown massively in a very short space of time because it tends to be that young people are living in a more conscious, precious, emergent time. But food miles is a massive issue. I mean, if you can, we were born into a place where you can pretty much within 2 miles radius of where you live, you can forage to get enough food in order to feed your family, or there was a time when you could do that. So obviously, eating locally and not having products shipped halfway around the world is a massive issue. The whole point now is we need to reduce our impact and take away our addiction to fossil fuel run industries. And of course, food miles is a massive part of that.
It's interesting though, because we're taught that we should try and eat as locally as possible, eat seasonal, eat local food, which makes sense. But then I found out that actually, if it's the winter time here in the UK, it would be better to eat an apple from New Zealand, simply because the carbon impact of that would be less than trying to grow one in the UK in polytunnels. Like, is that true?
I doubt it.
Any idea?
I don't know, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, but I doubt it very much.
But it is a minefield. Let's try and bust some myths here. So maybe there are some people who are thinking of going vegan or would like to move closer towards that. Can you get everything you need from vegan food?
Yes, you can. everything, all the vitamins, nutrients that you can get from an animal product diet, you can get from a vegan diet. The only thing that you may have to supplement is B12, but in factory farm animals that is supplemented anyway, so you're still getting that through supplements. It's just that if you supplement it directly, then you're getting it directly from a supplement rather than the animal. We've got actually on viva.org.uk, which is our website, there's plenty of information about nutrition and how you can get all of the vitamins you need from a vegan diet. So check that out if you are thinking about going vegan.
Dale, any common misconceptions that you get asked?
Well, I just want to add to that, really. If you think about it, the nutrients that we sometimes obsess over, calcium, vitamins, that kind of stuff, protein, where do animals get that from? They get that from the plants that they eat. We feed them plants so that we can eat their bodies, so that we can get the nutrients that we can get from plants. So they're just the middleman in our diet. And that's the perspective I just wanted to share.
Is it yourself who has invested in a football club who are entirely vegan? It's yourself?
Say again? Sorry?
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the football club who are entirely vegan?
Okay. Well, that's a football club called Forest Green Rovers. I think I've been turned up. And we rescued it. It's our local football club in Stroud. We rescued it in 2010, I think it was, and decided that we could do something quite special. We could create a green football club, and we could use football as a way to communicate with an audience of people that are rarely exposed to sustainability messages, the world of football. So we set about creating a green football club. One of the big things we did was to turn the club vegan, the players, the staff, the fans, and that's the thing that got us the most publicity, and it's gone crazy. In the last 12 months, we've reached 5 billion people around the world with our messages around energy, transport and food, just through the medium of football. So, and we're having fun as well at the same time.
A question for all of you. Have you all always been vegan, or was there a moment where you made the change?
No, I mean, I think it's quite rare. Most people aren't born vegan, and so a lot of people, before they go vegan, say the sentence, "I could never go vegan." I said it myself, and I think it's when you start kind of being more aware, and a lot of people don't go vegan overnight either. A lot of people, it takes months or years, and that's fine. And there's just so much kind of information, guidance out there nowadays that you can live a healthier and more ethical lifestyle by going vegan. So,
yeah. Jarvis, do you ever find being vegan limiting? Do you get frustrated by it?
Yeah, when I travel out of the south and go to places further up north and we're eating out, it can be a little bit tricky.
Right.
In answer to your first question, I've been a vegetarian since I was 27, something like that. And we became vegan because our daughter, who's now 3, started reacting to something in my wife's breast milk. And the doctors will call this colic. It's this thing called colic that nobody really knows what it is. So she consciously decided to wean things out. In fact, she cut more or less everything out of her diet and then started to wean things back in. And when the milk and the cheese came back in, our daughter started reacting. So she potentially was born a plant-based human being. So we became vegan in solidarity for her. But of course, for us, it was a lowering our carbon emissions profile as well. So it's a conscious way of living. I mean, I don't actually like the term veganism. I'm a little bit embarrassed about it when I tell people. But eating a plant-based diet and whole foods and a conscious way of eating is much more in line with the way I choose to live in the world.
Yeah. I'm wary of turning this into a panel purely about veganism because we have 3 vegans here on the panel, so we don't necessarily have someone representing the other side. So I do just want to put a devil's advocate out there here. In sort of like in an ideal world, we would all be getting our food from our own vegetable patches, grown around the corner, we'd be eating seasonally. But also, is there a world where we could get meat from our local farmers, and those farmers are actually using the animals as one of the most efficient ways of land management, and that actually, in that instance, animals are better than using huge agriculture, industrial methods? Sorry, that was a bit complicated.
Very briefly, the big issue is factory farming. These animals are kept in, awful, horrible, horrific situations where they don't really get a life. And that's the big issue, is factory farming. I think if you still enjoy meat and you want to go and buy an organic, piece of meat or something, then there's not a massive amount of harm in that. I mean, as long as humans have lived, they've eaten meat. But respectfully and consciously, and not, bought into a system where it's really driving a toxic lifestyle for the whole of humanity. I mean, you look at health issues; they all relate to the way. 90% of them relate to the way that people eat and their lifestyles. Cancer, all of these other really intense illnesses and diseases on the planet. So it's factory farming that's the big issue for me.
I would say. I just wanted to add that the climate has become a big issue for diet in the last maybe 10 years. Big reason to eat plants, not eat meat and dairy. Factory farming is the biggest part of the problem, but animals are inherently an inefficient way to make food for ourselves. But for me, there are 3 big reasons to go vegan, and it began for me as a child, and I just found that it was unreasonable to kill animals to eat them. I felt bad about that. And if you think about the way animals are treated, in factory farming it's the worst, but in normal farming it's still really bad. Slaughterhouses are awful places, and you've got to think about the animals. And do we really need to eat animals to live? Well, we don't, actually. Secondly, there's human health. That came along in maybe the last 20 years, increasing evidence of cancers and all sorts of modern illnesses that we have because of our diets, intense in meat and dairy in a way that's never happened before in history. And the third reason is for the climate. So I think there are 3 reasons, and for me, any one of them is enough to be vegan. Put them all together, and it's an unarguable case.
Just to take the conversation away from veganism again, but to sort of think a little bit about food and eating consciously more generally, it'd be interesting to talk about maybe one of the silent issues in the discussion, and that's a problem with food waste. So along with food miles, this again is something that I have a huge issue with. So I've just found some facts for all of us. And according to the United Nations, an estimated third of all food produced ends up either rotting in bins of consumers, it spoils due to poor transportation, or there are issues with harvesting practices. And together, wasted food accounts for 8% of all harmful emissions. A third of all the food that's produced that's meant to be eaten is wasted. That blows my mind. So what can we be doing about that? What's the solution there?
I think, again, it's about living consciously. I mean, if there's that amount of waste and yet there's so many more millions of people starving, there's a complete imbalance in our human social way of life. So we need to address, the big issues. Yeah, we're all sitting here with clothes and shoes, and we got transport to get here. But we need to think beyond our own micro country and think about the other countries where people don't have any food. And the people are much stronger than the governments and the big businesses, because we feed and plough money or votes into those systems. That's what we need to stop. The people are much stronger, but we've forgotten. So we need to take our power back and actually rebalance the systems as a whole. But food waste generally, I mean, I was on a TV show called Dumped on Channel 4 in 2007. And the very first week we ate there was 11 of us that lived on a landfill. But they bought the amount of food that one average family would throw away in a year. And at the time it was £500 worth of food. I mean, that is ridiculous.
Yeah, the money that's lost along the way as well is terrifying. Okay, so I actually want to open this up to questions now, so we can make sure that we're actually getting answers to what you lot want to know. So...
I just want to say that I think there's one bit of food culture that we haven't touched on, which is organic. And particularly because we know we're facing such a massive biodiversity crisis. So obviously our chemical use is a large part of our carbon footprint, but also we've got that biodiversity crisis. And I think everyone shies away from this because organic food tends to be more expensive and we don't want to load that on people. But I think it's something we absolutely have to address. Can I just say quickly also on the meat thing, don't forget pasture for life, which, is where we use traditional breeds and they're out on the fields 12 months a year, not cereal fed. We don't have that nitrous oxide problem from their waste, which is a big problem with our common agriculture at the moment. So just don't forget that if you're looking for meat that's ethical meat or dairy, look for Pasture for Life.
Yeah, so no, I appreciate that actually, because obviously we don't have anyone representing the farming side or that perspective. So it's good to have someone who can bring that. And I guess that's what I was trying to get at when I'm saying that, are there methods out there, and I believe there are, where actually animals can become part of a bigger system which actually contribute to a better ecosystem and can be eaten in a conscious way, as long as they are at the end of their life and have helped an ecosystem along that way, if that makes sense. So thank you for that.
Hi there. Yeah, just a quick question. So I'm relatively try and keep track on things. I have my own pigs, eat organically, but it seems there's a bit of an elephant in the room here. That after we're sort of 6.8 billion people now in the world, and we're going to be. I think it's going to top out at about 11.5 by about 2045, 50. So should we be talking and lobbying about not having as many children and educating less developed countries? You know, being vegan's great, but it's not going to help feed 11 billion people in sort of 20
Did you hear that? Do you want to repeat the... Oh, there we go.
You know, thank you for raising that, because depopulation is obviously a really important thing. But my sense is now, and we've been working in this space for 10 years, and these are all lifestyle issues. They're all issues that every single person that wants to live and wants their children to live needs to deal with. And I think there's an entry point, and veganism is going to be an entry point. Renewable energy is going to be an entry point. You know, what you put in your body, what you put on your body, depopulation, they're all entry points. Whatever you feel attracted to, you need to go out and be the change and make sure that everybody else around you is understanding what that change is. That's the gentleman at the back, the Extinction Rebellion t-shirt on. That's what this movement's about. We need to stop the systems, and then we need to prioritize what needs to be rebuilt. And obviously, reforestation, renewable energy, you know, changing the way we eat are massive, important subjects on humanity's, you know, on our issue right now. So yes, I think it's an important subject.
Hi. Could I ask Dale, please, to comment on Maddie buying an avocado that had packaging around it?
Well, I'm not a fan of plastic packaging, for sure. We need to end that habit of having plastic and throwing it away or even recycling it. I'm not such a worrier about food miles. I think that is a smaller problem than actually what we eat. The meat and dairy in our diets is far more impactful harmfully than an avocado from South America or somewhere. So I don't know what kind of comment you're looking for. I'm against plastic. I'm not against food being shipped around the world. I don't think that's the end of the world. I think the bigger problem to tackle is what we eat, meat and dairy. We need to stop it.
I'll say as well that it was almonds from California and they were in a tin. So plastic free as much as possible. Put that out there.
Hi, I have two children. For lunches we tend to do cheese sandwiches or ham sandwiches because that's what they eat. What would you suggest as an alternative?
Oh, that's probably Tayana.
Okay, yeah. So there's lots of kind of vegan cheeses and vegan meats available now. If you wanted to go for something that was, I guess, less processed, you could do things like mashed chickpea tuna, which is just like kind of mashed chickpea with like mayonnaise, or vegan mayonnaise. We've actually got a vegan recipe club. So if you search veganrecipeclub.co.uk, we've got about hundreds of recipes on there which give you vegan alternatives to normal, to your kind of meat and dairy meals. So have a look on there, and there should be plenty of options there.
Could you batch cook pasta as an alternative to sandwiches? I mean, I know busy mums, there's not much time for that, to be honest, but if you can do a big batch at one point and put it into portions, that could be just something a bit different as well.
You spoke regarding population explosion and saying perhaps we should have less children born. I don't think it's quite as simple as that. I think what we've got different demographics within the population of the world as it stands. Lots more people are living longer. They're living longer because of modern medicine. They're living longer because of finances. I'm no authority on this, but there's a fantastic book out there by a chap called Hans Rosling, and he's a Swedish statistician, You probably have seen him on the BBC. He's a fantastic advocate of public awareness, and he's great at demonstrating this. But he produced a book just before he died with his family, and it's called Factfulness, 10 Reasons Why We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think. And to prove this point, he has these 10 questions, which he has asked world leaders at the G20 conferences and things, and none of them scored better than a monkey with a pin. So, on the planet as a whole, we don't really understand what's going on. So it's a fantastic book if anybody wants to read it.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for that book recommendation there.
Another question for Dale, actually.
Yeah.
I've been eating at football grounds for decades, and I read somewhere recently that when Forest Green Rovers changed over to vegan food, that the sales actually didn't just go up, they went up significantly, which amazed me.
Is that
football
true?
fans are eating vegan foods at your ground and sales have gone up. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. I think since we began, sales have quadrupled, and people come to our games sometimes just for the food. Fans of other clubs come to our games and they say, we wish our club did this because we can't eat at a football ground, or because the food is rubbish, even if they're not necessarily vegan. The quality of food at football, you'll know, is quite a low bar. And so we make great food. It's handmade, and it's really nice as well as nutritious and that kind of stuff. And it's unusual in football, and we've added that to the experience of football for people.
All right, okay, we are going to have to wrap it up there. So thank you so much for joining us for this panel. Massive thank you to my panellists. We did our best to hear you. Sorry, the sound in here is a little bit tricky. But yeah, please put your hands together for Dale, Tayana and Jarvis. Thank you so much.
A really interesting and engaging talk with my panellists. Lots of hands went up when the Q&A happened at the end of our chat, which is always a good indicator of people interested in the subject. And we're all just really excited to see the impact flexible dieting and eating can bring. We hope you like these talks. Please give us some feedback at podcast@fullychargedshow.co.uk. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and our YouTube channels. Leave us a 5-star rating, that'd be nice, and review on your podcast player of choice. Lastly, thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Without your help, we couldn't make the show or this very podcast or our live events. So thank all of you. So if you have been, thanks for listening.